Hello, 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 coaches and leaders. I have Dr. Chris Jones, Executive Director of the VASCD, on with me. I'm super pumped. We have had multiple very geeky conversations about all things education and leadership and coaching, and he is a wealth of knowledge. So I'm excited he's on here with me. This conversation is going to be very much a conversation. Him and I agree on a lot, sometimes debate on things. And so this conversation is going to be kind of in that flow. So I'm excited. So first, I wanted to welcome you to the show, Chris.
Hello, welcome. You speak way too highly of me. Please do not set the bar that high because, ladies and gentlemen, I am not the things that Becca just said. I just love to engage in conversation, talk about some experiences that I've been fortunate enough to have, but all of the things that I learned from folks just like you for my role now throughout the Commonwealth, just to speak to those things. And whether or not they're true or whether or not you agree, that's what makes conversation fun. So let's have
Yeah.
some fun.
I know, so I'm excited. So, I would love you to share with folks just so they know your background, right? So, VASCD, by the way, is the Virginia uh statewide entity of ASCD, a branch. I'm not sure actually what to call that. Okay, so you're the Virginia version of ASCD, and I'd love you to share with everyone what's your experience in education and that led you to what you do now.
Yeah, so the word you were looking for is affiliate. So we are
Affiliate.
an affiliate. But it's becoming a lot more interesting because ASCD has merged with ISTE, and the partnership program is being redefined as we speak. But I'm fortunate to serve as the executive director for the Virginia affiliate of ASCD. I came into this role about 2.5 years ago. It was March of 2022. I absolutely love this job. I call it the best job in the world, and I stand by that. I was a high school principal before in if anybody's familiar with Virginia, in Chesterfield, Virginia, which is just south of Richmond. I was a principal before stepping into this role, assistant principal before that. I got the privilege of serving for 2 years in a central office position. That was a brand new program that the superintendent created at the time in Virginia Beach. It was called the Center for Teacher Leadership. And the program was taking 10 teachers out of the classroom and putting them together to create professional development for teachers by teachers. And that was 2 years that I got to spend as a coach, as a person who helped people navigate PLCs and PLC leadership. I really cut my teeth in instructional leadership in those 2 years because I got to do all of the cool things that school principals and school leaders get to do without all the not so cool things,
Yeah.
which was great. But I cut my teeth as a high school math teacher, so that's my educational journey. I stumbled into education by way of the United States Army. I was an airborne ranger for 6 years, and after just one tour of Afghanistan, when I got back, I was given the opportunity to serve as an instructor for the leadership prep course that we had, and like that's where I found my gift. I was just a natural when it came to all things instruction without having any formal training in it, and so I knew that I didn't want to be an airborne ranger and a father. So in game, I was going to get out of the military. I just didn't have an exit strategy until I served in this role, and I loved math and found this gift in teaching. So I just thought, why don't I separate from the military, go to school, get a secondary ed math teaching degree, and go be a high school math teacher? And so I did. And here we are recording this wonderful podcast for your audience.
I love this. Okay. So amazing. So okay, you and I this what we're going to talk about today is this continuum that you have created that you call like different levels of engagement, like teacher engagement, different levels of teacher engagement. I'm going to be very clear with folks. This is not about student engagement. This is about adults, teacher engagement. And the first time I met you at the VASCD Coaches Conference, which you're going to share a little bit more later, I was presenting at that conference, and you and I were talking about buy-in, and you said you had this continuum. And so the first thing I want to say is, folks, there's going to be some cognitive dissonance in this episode because I'm going to sometimes we we deal with contradictions, or we anyway, there's going to be, it's not this conversation about buy-in and teacher engagement is not linear. But you and I do love some good continuums, Chris. We've talked about multiple of them and making things that should be continuums. So I would love you to share with everyone, what is this continuum? What are the different pieces? How do they show up in schools? Share all your brilliance.
Well, it's not brilliance, but I definitely appreciate it. So I think why we like continuums is it feels more like a slider, right?
Mhm,
It's not like a
mhm,
bucket where you belong to this thing and you are forever beholden to that label. The
mhm.
continuum kind of allows us to slide and have gradients
Mhm.
of certain things. And what I appreciate about the idea of the slider is that a person as a human being might show up on one particular area of a continuum on one day and then another day be in a different area. I like life happens and we are humans, so it's not like we are 100% on track and like these perfect robots all the time. And so I want to put that out there, like the concept of a continuum being a slider, and the concept of, yes, I'm going to give 7 labels on this continuum, but it doesn't mean that once a person is in this space, they're always in that space, because
Right.
change can happen, and so too can life. And so we talked about this because we engaged in a conversation about buy-in, and I didn't tell you about the continuum first. I just told you that I thought buy-in was like a 4-letter word, like it's a curse word, it's a bad word, because I don't think that buy-in is a high enough aim.
Mm. Yeah, and I
So
agreed with you. I agreed
yes,
with you. You remember that in that
did.
conversation? I agreed with you, which is ironic because I have courses called, about building buy-in. So anyway, this is where the cognitive dissonance comes in. Okay, continue.
Yeah, yeah. So if you picture a continuum, and we are going to have a download, right?
Yes.
So a
Yes.
download will be available for everyone to actually
Mhm,
visualize
mhm,
what it is that we're talking about here. If you picture like a continuum, so a line that goes across with arrows on both sides, because
mhm,
this might not be complete, and right in the middle, we're going to put buy-in. So
mhm,
if there are 7 things, 7 labels, or 7 levels of engagement that we're going to discuss, right in the middle is buy-in. So if
mhm,
buy-in is right in the middle, we know we've got some things to the left that are going to
mhm,
be less than buy-in, and some
mhm.
things to the right that are going to be a little bit deeper than buy-in. And so what I proposed to you was that buy-in is simply not a high enough bar. It's not a
Yep.
high enough target. It's not a
Mhm,
high enough aim for
mhm,
a leader to truly make not just organizational change, but organizational greatness,
mhm.
taking organizations to the next level. So in this continuum, um, we have, of those 7, all the way, I'm going to start all the way from the left, and we're going to work all the way to the right, and you'll see where buy-in comes, and you'll see why I think buy-in is a low bar. So all the way to the left is this word that can sometimes destroy an organization, destroy a leader and the change, and disrupt the vision, and that's sabotage. So the first level of engagement that we're really going to dive into, beyond, buy-in, we know is one of them, but sabotage is the one on the far left. And I think about sabotage as an individual in your organization. And Becca did a great job differentiating between teachers and students. I think I've put this against the test for just organizational levels of engagement. So
Yeah.
this isn't just an educational thing. This is
Yeah.
all levels of employment, really. But when it comes to your organization, so the one on the far left is sabotage. These are individuals who are actively working to bring you down, or to disrupt the vision, or to stop the change from happening, but actively working to sabotage the efforts in the organization. And I would say that folks who are working in the sabotage most of the time are under the cover of darkness, and very covert about their sabotage work and can be like and have this negative energy that as a leader you just don't want to be around. You don't want to associate with the kind of person who doesn't believe in the vision that has been created, who's not actively working towards making it happen. And I would say that for the most part that might work. When it doesn't work is if the person who is the saboteur has influence. And so, as a leader, always paying attention to folks who have influence on either end of this continuum is extremely critical, because those who have influence will be the ones who gather the people and will really get enough people in your organization behind an idea. And if that idea is to bring you down or to stop
Mhm.
the vision from happening, we really need to pull that person in and become best friends to really understand the hesitance and the work to sabotage.
Mhm.
We might not need to use that direct language with the person, but recognizing that this is an important and influential individual in our organization. And when we're
Mhm.
talking now, we're talking about schools, but really bringing that person in to kind of become best friends. So sabotage is on the far left.
Mhm.
One step up towards on this continuum would be defiance. This is somebody who's going to do whatever it is that they want to do, but they're not going to do what it is that you tell them to do. And at the same time, they're not actively working to like bring you down. They're
Mhm.
just not contributing to the advancement, the work towards the vision. This is just somebody who is defiant. Now, sometimes that defiance can really, like, if you're like me, defiance like will hurt your feelings. Like sabotage is one thing, like that's something you can get behind, but why somebody wouldn't want to work towards the vision of the organization just is
Yeah.
beyond me. So I personally struggled with folks who were defiant. So I found that bringing them to the table, really trying to understand why aren't you engaged in this, help me better understand, and how, what would you need in order to at least think about moving one level up on this continuum that we're creating. um, so sabotage is to the far left, then defiance. The next level up, we're beginning to get into doing the work, right? So we got sabotage, defiance. The next level would be compliance. Compliance is just what it is. It's I'm going to do what you tell me to do,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's it. Like, you tell
Mhm.
me to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm not excited about it. I'm not passionate. I'm not motivated. I'm a really good employee who values
Mhm.
my paycheck, who values the status of my work and my job. And so I'm going to make sure I check the box and do exactly what it is that you tell me to do. For the most part, uh, many employees live in this bucket, this compliance bucket. So moving up in the continuum, now that's the first three. So we're hitting right in the middle, we're hitting buy-in. So buy-in is such a popular word, and I understand the idea and the intent behind folks using that term buy-in. But for me, buy-in is just sophisticated compliance. It means
Mhm.
you're going to do the thing that I've asked you to do. Um, I had to sell you something. I had to maybe cajole you, or maybe I had to trick you. And God forbid I had to incentivize you to do something. But if you're bought into something, that means it's not yours. Like, you're purchasing this thing. It's somebody else's idea. It's somebody else's vision. It's somebody else's passion. It's somebody else's um, direction for taking this organization, and you are sold on it. And so you're going to do the thing that we're doing to get towards that vision, because you know what? I tricked you, or I cajoled you, or I sold you some version of the truth to get you to do it. So it's sophisticated compliance, and it's just one level above compliance, right in the middle of continuum. So this is the first like break from this idea of we got to get buy-in, we've got to get buy-in. And yes, buy-in is important because you want the people to do the things, but it's a low bar. And Beck, I'm gonna stop right here so that we can actually have some engagement, some follow-up, some questions, some pushback.
Mhm.
But we've gone through the first kind of half of this continuum that we were talking about for levels of engagement.
Yes. Yeah, no, I don't know. I was thinking about, as you're talking, I was thinking about like levels of activeness within the teacher, right? So I was thinking like sabotage is active. And then going up to defiance and compliance kind of seem less active to me. Like a little like, oh, I'm just not gonna do it. Or like, oh, I'll do it. I don't, I'm not like it just kind of as you're talking, I was kind of hearing just levels of activeness. Um and buy-in, this is also I feel like it's a continuum and a continuum. Buy-in requires a level of activeness in for the leadership. So it's almost like sabotage is very active on the teacher's part. Defiance is less active. I'm just not gonna do it. Compliance is also less active. Fine, I'll do it. Whatever, right? And then there's buy-in, which is active on the leadership part. We're moving around and we're trying to get people to follow our directions. I, as a leader, or my boss, right? Maybe a school leader's boss, made a decision, and I am going to get you, someone, a teacher, to want to do the decision that they didn't make. So I don't know. I was just thinking about that. And then I was also thinking about levels of social capital. So when you're talking about in any of these, really, but especially the ones that are like heavy teacher activity, like sabotage, if you have someone or people that have strong social capital versus
Yeah.
human capital, I learned about this recently. Apparently, other people knew about this. I only learned about it recently. Uh, and yeah, if someone has social capital in the heavily active levels, that could impact a school for positive or negative outcomes. So those
Yeah.
are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's where, what you're calling social capital, I call influence, which it's the
Yeah,
same thing. Like
it's the same thing. Yeah.
folks will do what I convince them to do, or
Yeah.
they will look at me for how to behave or how to respond or how to react. And
Yeah.
so my reaction or my response or my level of engagement will be what whoever it is that who I have influence over
Mhm.
will kind of follow that. And I really like what you said about um it's somebody else's decision, because I
Mhm.
think that buy-in, the decision making is what I
Yeah,
think where buy-in, when we move to the next level, that's where,
it delineates it.
that's, yeah, like
Yeah,
buy-in is that make or break, like who made the
just
decision.
made the decision. Yep,
Yeah, I love that. So
yep.
so moving on in the continuum, um, is is the next level beyond buy-in is ownership.
Mhm,
So we talk about folks who have ownership within the organization. That's because they were asked, they for their input, they had a seat at the table when it came to giving information. Decision still lives with somebody else,
mhm,
right? However, my voice has been heard, and it's very clear that my ideas, I can see them in clients. I'm a level beyond buy-in because my input is present within the decision, within the vision. And so when it comes to aiming for ownership, one level beyond buy-in, you can start to be, you can begin to see how aiming for ownership allows us to uh, get more momentum
mhm,
behind an idea, behind a vision, behind a project, behind an initiative, because we asked for input. Where I think, and so now what's that, number five? So
mhm.
sabotage, defiance, compliance, buy-in, and then
Yep.
ownership. Where I believe um, our leaders really need to aim is for this word commitment.
Mhm,
And when we aim for commitment, we start to assure ourselves not just of the momentum, but that it can become way more than the leader, him or herself, could have ever envisioned, because um, they did have a seat at the table. Their input was part of it. but it goes beyond that because they were at the table when it came time to make the decision, when it came time to build that shared vision, when it came time to make decisions about the strategic implementation to get there. Steps one, step two, step three. The individual's values are clearly aligned with the organizational's values, and so when they mesh and mold, I believe in this. It is me. I am it, and I'm going to commit to making this thing happen. And so if we aim for commitment,
Mhm.
and the more folks that we can involve in that process, in that decision making process, in that valuing, in that vision, and that all of those pieces that we were just talking about, the more we're going to get the momentum towards working for that, and the more it will shape into something far beyond what the leader could have built from
Mhm.
ownership back.
I
um,
I have I have an example of this that I want to
yeah,
share.
yeah,
I've been working with this school district in Kentucky, and they're wonderful. And I've been this is my fourth year working with them, and I have been helping them roll out this STEM initiative for 4 years. And the first couple of years, it was like a faulty lighter. Like we'd get a spark, and then it would die very quickly, right? And so we're just like sparking, dying for years, right? And it could be frustrating, right, to keep trying over and over again for years. The end of the third year, something happened. Because I was we had the cohort model where it's kind of the change adoption curve where you start with a committed group of folks and then it grows to early adopters and then late adopters, right? So a small cohort. Two of the teachers created a document. We really were focusing on the quality of discourse throughout the school, right? Every single teacher is concerned with increasing the frequency and quality of discourse throughout the school, right? These two teachers created a 60-page Canva document that was branded, school branded, that had discourse strategy, had the why, had multiple, had a why, had lesson plans for each grade level to start the school year. They made an acronym, Let's Talk, that LETS, all of them stand for something.
yeah,
That it had strategies, it had supports, it had printable, like TPT style, printable things that they could put on students' desks that support their discourse. This document was it, and they just no one asked them to, right? So
yeah.
that I would call that commitment, right? And
So
everything.
that's actually that's one level beyond commitment, and so that's
Oh,
me. Like, to me, that's leadership. So leadership is the last
okay.
component of the continuum, is that not only am I committed, I'm
Yeah.
also going to use my influence, use my tools, my skills, my resources to create a space where I can help others
Okay.
get into that commitment, either through this why or through the how.
Uh-huh.
So the more we can spread and share leadership, I don't think we aim for leadership. I think we need to aim for commitment, and then we build the
Mhm,
capacity for folks who are ready to lead the change.
mhm,
And
mhm,
those two teachers you're talking about, in just in my conceptualization of this continuum, is in the leadership bucket. So I
mhm,
believe so deeply in this discourse, in the let's talk, that
uh-huh,
we are going to create a 60-page document resource to help our teachers
uh-huh,
implement this. And so
uh-huh,
that's the last step in my head. The last step of the continuum is leadership. So we go from sabotage, defiance, compliance, buy-in,
mhm,
ownership, ownership, commitment, and then leadership of the change from within the organization. And I'm not talking about like leaders who are named leaders or at the top of a traditional hierarchy. I'm talking about the grassroots leadership. When we talk about social capital and we talk about influence, some folks can use their influence to sabotage you, and some folks can use their influence to advance and to really
right.
get the vision off the ground.
Exactly. And thinking about social capital, these two specific teachers that created this document had an incredible amount of social capital. So okay, I'm going to use some terms on this continuum, right? It was easier because I helped them gain buy-in with the teachers, right? So thinking through these different levels exist at the same time, right? So someone outside of the school made a decision district-wide that discourse is important. And then the school, right? So people within the school have different levels of engagement. We have a couple folks on leadership, and a strong number in ownership right under them. And then to roll this document right out in the school, buy-in, a lower level, had to happen first because actually, and I'm okay with you arguing with me on this, uh, because they again, the rest of the teachers didn't make this document, right? And they didn't choose, initially they anyway, they didn't have ownership over it. Someone else made it, even though it's a teacher in the school. And so the introduction is at the buy-in level. Is that am I accurate in saying that?
Yep, absolutely. And so anytime, and you said it right at the beginning, when I stopped after buy-in, you said it's somebody else's decision.
Yeah.
As soon as a decision is made,
Mhm.
like the level of engagement that happens leading up to that decision is really gonna is really going to determine where a leader is aiming. If a leader
Okay.
is aiming for buy-in, a leader is
Mhm.
not concerned with input, a leader is not concerned
Right.
with voice, a leader is not concerned with people in the organization doing the problem finding and the problem
Mhm.
solving, because discourse might not have been the solution that the people came up with. And
Right.
so where I would, not push back, but just extend your thinking, is that if a leader engages in the problem finding process with the people,
Mm.
whether that's analyzing data, doing the keep stop start interviews, gathering survey input, doing some focus groups, figuring out where are our pinch points, and then working with the people to develop potential solutions, and then continuing to work with them on the decision making process, and then a prototype. Here's what we were thinking based on all of these things. What we're uncovering really is discourse. And so we heard you. This is what we're thinking. Here's a prototype. What do you think about pursuing discourse and the potential impact on student learning outcomes and the changes to your pedagogy, et cetera, et cetera? Give me some feedback on this. We're going to do some focus groups. Here's a document that I'm sharing. You've got commenting rights.
Mhm.
Throw all
Mhm.
of your input and feedback in there. So we haven't made the decision yet,
Mhm.
right? We're in a prototype model, and once we get that feedback, we put the next iteration of the decision in
Mhm.
front of some key leadership people, and perhaps these two teachers. That's when they build the 60-page document and say, based on all of the feedback, all of the input, the problem seeking, the problem finding, the solutions that we generated, potentials, the iteration that we went, the feedback, this is our direction. So you can see a very clear difference between something that was created without and something that
Mhm.
was created within. When it is
Mhm.
created within and somebody can see their values, can see their voice, can see their
Mm.
work in the decision, then you're aiming far beyond convincing someone to comply with the directive. It's
Mm.
very much different level of leadership that really works towards organizational velocity,
Mm.
not speed, not direction, but speed and direction. Just that
Right.
idea of organizational velocity.
I agree. Things happen so, part of what I do is I'm like, coaches, I help you save time. When coaches think things have to take a certain time, I'm like, it actually doesn't. When you have folks that are owning change and also strong relationships, right? And I know this, but it's when you have a strong level of trust and relationships and they're owning the change, things happen super quickly, quicker than you could ever imagine. So, I was thinking about how could schools do this, right? Like this process could feel ambiguous and messy because most schools don't operate like this. Most schools, someone in the central office makes a decision, spend $1 million on this program, and then everyone's told you got to do it, right? So I'm wondering, one of the thoughts I had as you were talking, and I was like, how could schools do this within our current context of compliance culture? Right, so schools default, don't have to be this way, but default into compliance culture. What we think normal schooling is this default compliant culture, right? Compliance culture. So, this is what I'm wondering. Could schools take their SIP goals, their school improvement goals that are hopefully data-based, right? So it's like, "We will improve in this way," right? could schools have they create their school improvement goals, right? Someone has to do that work to look at all the data and right? And say, okay, these are our pinch points. Could people take that and bring it to a a team of teachers, a committed team of teachers, and say, here are pinch points. These are ways that we want to improve, and then make a plan from there. Would that be a good starting point?
Yeah, so yes, and what I would recommend is not determining the pinch points, not analyzing the
Okay.
data in isolation. I would involve the people in analyzing the data. I would involve the
Oh,
people in problem finding. I would
okay.
involve the people in developing potential one or two. I never recommend more than one goal. Like
Yeah.
finding out what is our big rock, what is our
Mhm.
school wide goal, and then your strategies and objectives will kind of fall underneath that goal. But what a school can control is when they involve the people. So that really that's what levels
Mm,
of like if you're the earlier you involve the people before making a decision, the higher you're aiming on that continuum. The higher you aim on that continuum, the more time you're going to invest in the front end. But like you said, once we make that decision, the change is going to happen way better than you could have
yeah.
ever. You can either spend time on the back end or the front end. You're going to spend time in one
Exactly.
area. And I promise you, the more folks you have committed to the vision, committed to the
Mhm,
goal of the SIP,
mhm.
committed to
Yeah.
the strategic plan, the better that work is going to be. Not just because, oh wow, they're getting the work done. No, it is they're doing the work that they decided needed to be done, and therefore it will far exceed your expectations for what's possible in a school. But
Yeah.
going back, I want to touch upon something because what you mentioned is many times schools don't have the autonomy to create their shared vision. I I hope I hope our schools um, in Virginia and far beyond, their principals have the autonomy to create a shared vision that is unique for their school community. Even in our small school divisions, I know our school leaders do have that because our division leaders give it. But there are times when there are some non-negotiables, thou shouts, right? Like here's a directive, this is what I need you to implement.
Mhm.
And so what I would do, what I my recommendation as any level leader, whether you're a coach or a school leader or a school improvement specialist or a testing coordinator, no matter what your role is, if you're the point of implementation, when that directive comes down, before even communicating it out, before saying, well, this is how we're going to make it work, bring your people in,
Yeah.
particularly those with influence, the saboteurs
Mhm.
with influence, the defiance,
Mm,
compliance with it, with influence,
mm.
your commitment with influence, your leaders with influence. Put them all in a room and say, look, this is the thing we have to do. Help me make this relevant and useful for our school so that we can
Mhm.
implement with fidelity, but then also do it in a way that our people will be committed to this change. And so a school leader does have power to do that. Um, and when it starts to look, now here's where it gets a little dicey for some of
I
our
see.
principals. Some of our principals will have the courage to stand up and raise their hand, and some will be like, no, we're going to do it.
Mhm,
In a culture where it is collaborative, where it does believe in the people, where it's human centered,
mhm,
uh, if what the people in the school start to like beat up this thing and say, okay, this is how we can make it work. If it starts to look anything different than with fidelity, that's when the principal needs to work with whoever the directive came from and say, hey, listen, I want you to hear from our teachers. If you want to hear from directly, or if you want me to give you the Cliff Notes version of it, this is what we're thinking. This is what we came up with. Can we work on this together? Can we collaboratively think about what this is? How do I have any wiggle room, or does this need to be like non-negotiable, black and white? I fought for my people, for what my people wanted, but hey, in the end, this is the law. This is the code. This is where we've got to go. And when a principal can engage in that dialogue, then that becomes very powerful for everyone, because all the people of influence who you ask for their opinion, if they see you to go to bat for them, your saboteurs start to move up the level of engagement because they see and they believe in what it is that you're doing, and they appreciate that you freaking ask them, because saboteurs have typically never been asked.
yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'll say that, but then I want to end that little part with I believe deeply that the four most important words in leadership are listen to your people. And
Mhm.
so if we can listen to our people and hear where those pinch points are, or hear where the greatness lies that we can build off of, to hear where the change is going to impact, we can begin to make the adjustments that we need so that the thing that we want to do or the thing that the people want to do can actually happen.
Yeah. And I want to say something about that. When we listen to our people, it's an ability to listen to our people and being willing to hear things that we don't like. So there's a few things I want to say about it. One is we want to be self-aware enough to create the safe space for people to say what is honest and authentic for them, right? And that means that all of our shoulds, well, they shouldn't feel that way or they should know what's best for kids. We have to do the self-awareness work ourselves to not create our own resistance and allow them to say what they need to say. That's number one. And the second thing, I've been saying a lot lately is if you can name it, you can tame it.
Mm,
So if teachers can name what their pinch points are, right? Then we actually have a chance to tame it. I think a misnomer, a misunderstanding in schools is that if we let them actually say how they're feeling, it's gonna get out of control. And it's the opposite. It's what we resist persists. And so if it's a simmering thing that's going unsaid in schools and people aren't able to say it, it not only stays there, but it grows and it expands. And even though people aren't saying it, it is still there. So I did want to say that. So I
no,
love that you said that.
no, I love and I appreciate that you address the environment, like
Mhm. Yep.
psychological safety. Like
Yep.
I'm in a space because so two things. Don't ask if you're not ready for the answer,
Yep.
and don't ask if you're not willing to follow through. So
Yep.
the quickest way, competence is the quickest way. We talked about this.
Yes. Yes.
Competence is the quickest way to gain trust, and character is the quickest way to lose it. But when somebody tells you something or gives their input or their opinion, or you ask for something and then they see it happen,
Mm, mm-mm.
boom, that goes through the roof. But if you ask me and there's no follow through, I never see it. And if it happens once, maybe, but if it happens twice, forget about it. You're not going to move me on my level of engagement, and you're not going to get the most and the best out of me when it comes to um, that organizational momentum towards a vision. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because when you create the conditions for that to happen and then you follow through on the backside, sky's the limit.
Exactly. I want to say one more thing around this continuum because I've really been experiencing this in within my whole educator academy. So part of my academy is data driven coaching. And so one of the things that I do is I say, what are your school goals? And the coaching is aligned, intentionally aligned with the school goals. Everyone is growing in the same direction. And I'm thinking about moving people along this continuum, right? First of all, naming where they are, right? And if there's no good or bad, right? It's just neutral. It's like, okay, this is where I think they are right now. And how do we move them forward? Not how do we leap them, but how do we move them forward, maybe even to the next step? And one of them, coaching is a huge vehicle for moving folks along the continuum, right? Moving a saboteur to even, compliant, and how do we just move them up a notch or two when the messaging of the school is consistent. When we say as a school, we are focused on these goals and our coaching is also focused in the same way, it helps to, and I'm going to say it, build buy-in, right? We're at least getting um folks away from damaging being damaging, right? Or take or at least or stopping the action to being part of forward movement. And I just want to say that like coaching can really impact moving folks forward on the continuum.
I think where coaching comes in, it's there's a little bit of will development and there's a little bit of
Mhm,
skill development when it comes
mhm,
to coaching. I think for an organization to move in a direction, to set a north star, to have a vision, to say this is what we're aiming for in any individual organization. If we're talking about a school here with teachers, those teachers are entering into that journey at different places. So a coach can take each teacher for where they are and how they're entering into the journey, because you might have teachers who are farther along the journey or who have a certain skill set that you can either develop or tap into. But a leader who understands that every individual within the organization is starting off in a different place, and to meet them where they are, to take them in a direction. It might not mean that by the end of the year they're at the star, but every employee, every teacher, every person who belongs to an organization deserves a year's worth of growth every year that they are in that organization. And so that's where I think coaching comes in, is that a coach doesn't work with organizations. A coach works with an individual teacher. And so one teacher at a time, based on where they are, what their skill sets are, what resources they might need, or what might be missing. And sometimes it's just a shoulder to like lean on, you know what I mean? Like, or an ear to bend. It's not even about the will or the skill. It's just about, my life is falling apart right now and I just need somebody to listen to me in a non-judgmental way. Can you just hold space for me? So that's what I appreciate about coaching, is that it's super individualized and personalized for each person as they're working on their individual goals to contribute to the organizational goal.
All right, and I want to shift into our final thing we're going to talk about, which is the coaches conference. So
Yay!
VASCD puts on an annual coaching conference. This is just for instructional coaches, and I find instructional leaders come too, right? So if you're in a position, sometimes like district level folks come too, that work with adults, right? This is about adult learning and impacting adult learning in our school districts. I love this conference. I go every year. So I'd love you to share about it, Chris. Like when is it? What's going on? How can folks find out about it?
Yeah, so we 3 years ago we teamed up with the Virginia affiliate of ISTE. So VISTE, for my Virginia listeners, I know you know who VISTE is, but we teamed up and we offered on a very small scale, like a half day conference. And we were like, can we get 75 people? We got 600. We had to offer it 3 different times because the venue that we had couldn't hold that many folks, but we wanted to respond to the need. And so we started on a small scale. The very next year, year two, which was February of this past year, we did it as a 2 day conference. The venue was terrible. We're not going back. We broke the Wi-Fi, which is not good for a conference center. So this year coming up, 2025, it's February 4th and 5th in Williamsburg. So the Williamsburg Lodge, February 4th and 5th. We've got Jody Carrington opening us up for the keynote. We've got a great panel lined up, which Becca is on the panel.
Yep.
And then we've got a closeout with Dr. Kim, who is a repeat keynote speaker because she set the conference on fire. And when you could set the conference on fire, well, we want just a little bit more of that. So those are our major headliners. And then we've got 5 different time slots for concurrent sessions. So a lot to learn, a lot to do, and a lot of time for networking. But if you're interested, vascd.org. If you go to our events, you'll see all of our stuff. All of our programs are up there. But the coaching conference, you click on it, you can get some information that you need. And of course, registration is on there. I think we're almost sold out of the hotel block to get a room discount. But don't quote me on that because I haven't checked it in a week, so we'll
Okay.
see. But
All right.
yes, vascd.org is our website, and then go to
Yeah.
our events.
And I'll put the link directly to the conference as well in the in the show notes, so that'll be easy for folks. Because like, I know a lot of folks are looking for conferences, and this is a phenomenal conference. The Williamsburg Lodge is gorgeous,
Yeah.
and it's a little like retreat like, it feels a little like retreat style, like, it's beautiful, and Williamsburg, Virginia is also kind of a destination in itself. It's kind of old-timey Virginia, and so anyway, highly recommend the conference. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. So Chris, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. As usual, we get to learn from each other and geek out and share all of our thoughts. So I'm looking forward to everyone getting their hands on this continuum as well.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it, Becca. Always a pleasure.